Hi everyone, this is Suzanne, and this is a brief video on flipping the classroom, an introduction in preparation for our first face-to-face meeting. So I thought it would be a good idea if we kind of model and experience what flipping feels like and perhaps looks like. And so I'm going to be sending this out in an email describing what it is I'd like you to do before we actually get together next week. And I'll talk a little bit in this video about what I expect to happen in the cohort, but I'm totally open to what people would like to get out of this. If people have different goals, that's absolutely fine. So let's get started. I think it's a good thing to start with some definitions of flipping and what's the current thinking about flipping. So I'm going to go out to a few of these websites. I'm only going to do it briefly, but I'd like you to go back. I've picked out 4 or 5 resources that I think are very good and reliable that can give you some good background on flipping. And this is really, a good example of what flipping is, where normally my first inclination is, okay, when we first get together in the session, I'll talk to you about flipping, I'll define it. But this is really the essence of flipping. This kind of informational background is something that you certainly can do before you come to the session, so that when we're in the session we can do more application and thinking about your own courses and how flipping might work in those courses. So I'm going to go out to some of these websites just to show you them real quickly, just to see what I can go over and show you what I'm talking about. So the first one is EDUCAUSE, which I think is a really great resource. And if you could just go to educause.edu and I put in the search the term flipping, and you can see that they even are beyond 9 pages worth of resources. So if you go through the resources I've kind of pointed out and you still want more, certainly come back here and go through any of those. I like their series that's 7 things you should know about. So that's where I would start. And when you get to that page, if you look at, to show you here, that's this very first link, the 7 things you should know about flipped classrooms. And if you go and then click on Adobe PDF at the bottom, that'll take you out to the PDF, which you can then save. And I really like these because it gives you a little scenario. It talks about what it is, how it works, who's doing it, why is it important, what are the downsides, and where they think it's going in the future and what the implications are for teaching and learning. So I think that's a really good, quick, down and dirty example of, and some background. I like this from Washington, University of Washington Center for Teaching and Learning, Flipping the Classroom. I like this because I think you'll see, if you've been doing any following of the literature, that many people do a flipped classroom by exactly what I'm doing here, recording some kind of a lecture and then having some in-class activities. But I like their definition because it talks a little bit more about some of the other ways. Obviously not everything's going to be a video. We ask students to read things all the time before they come to class, and so it could certainly just be some reading that you're asking them to do. So look through this resource. I think it's really very well done. It gives you some other resources. This quick start guide for flipping the class, that's actually one of the links here that I've asked you to look at. If you go out to that one, this actually takes you to, I skipped ahead here, that takes you to this page, this quick start guide, which asks you to look at your course and what makes the most sense for your course. So I'd like you to take a look at that and go to this first link. You can go to these others as well, but that may be getting ahead of ourselves a little bit. But and read through this to get to start to think about where this flip model might make sense in your course. You don't need to have the answer to that yet, but I just want you to start to think about it a little bit. And then this is a really good resource that Walter Arnold, who's going to be coming to show what he's been doing with flipping, showed me, the Flipped Learning Network, and this has a really good definition. What is flipped learning? They've been doing it for a long time, and have spent some time getting a really good definition together. So if you wanted to take a look at that, this PDF of the definition, pillars, and indicators, I think is really a good handout as well that you could go to and look through that information. So if you take some time to one by one go through each one of the resources at those links, and to be ready for our face-to-face session, I think once you go through all of that, I think you should have a good basic understanding of what a flipped class is and perhaps what it is not. And ask yourself, could you explain it to a colleague at this point in time? What does it mean by flipping a class? And do you have some sense of the role of active learning in the flipped model? What's that role? And how is flipping different from or similar to your current teaching practice? As I said at the beginning, my first inclination was, well, on our first session, I'll have to give them information about flipping. And it really made me already start to think in a different way and say, wait a minute, I can have you do that before. Now we can do much more meaningful things when we're together. So that's just one example. And have you looked at enough examples through those websites, enough to be able to begin to discuss? So not have the answers to it, but at least to be able to begin to discuss with others how you might want to apply flipping in your own courses. And I would also say, as a big caveat at this point, that we're not looking at a big course redesign at this point. It's way too much to be able to really think about doing that. You should really, and I got a good guideline at at the Lilly conference that I just attended. Someone gave a really excellent presentation on flipping, and the UT University of Texas at Austin kind of parameters are saying, just think about doing it for perhaps 3 lessons only in the course of an entire semester the first time you do it. And that's enough to kind of get a sense of it, to get your students used to it, and not to have be a big unwieldy redesign for yourself. So think about starting small, start with 1 lesson, 1 module, and we'll build from there, okay? And so what are we going to do in our face-to-face meetings? So in the very first session, you should come to the session with a general understanding of the flip model based on the information at the websites that I've given you. And then I'd like you to email me before the session at this email address with 1 to 3 questions or concerns that you have about flipping the class, and 1 to 3 thoughts on the positive potential of using flipping in your classes. So I want you to think about questions and concerns and also potential, and then email those to me before the session. And in session 1, we're going to go over those questions and potentials. We'll talk about them, share back to the group what everyone's thinking. And then we're going to determine your personal goals for participation in the cohort, because I know everybody has different goals, and that's absolutely fine. Some people can come to 1 session, some people can come to multiple, some people may just want to watch, other people may want to really go into a redesign, and all of that is fine. So we'll talk about what everybody wants to accomplish. And then we're going to complete a flipped activity. So you've done the prep work before you come, and then we're going to actually do an activity that introduces us to some of the examples of in-class activities. So the active learning part, the application part, okay, they've done the content, now what do I do in class part, right? So we'll do some of that together as an activity. And then we'll set future directions. So Walter Arnold, who is an instructor on our campus, who has been flipping his class with great success, in his high school setting and also in the past semester, a little bit in his courses here, and has had really great success. And he's going to come on the 20th to show what he's been doing, talk, and give a little demo, show some of the technology, and then we'll talk on the 20th about what people want to do in terms of the technology they want to get some exposure to, and we can work that in many different ways. We'll talk about that more on the 20th, and how we'll use that for the development of content for just one lesson for those folks who want to actually do the redesign. And then the following session, we'll do a show and tell. So people who've developed content will come back. Everybody will go through and show what people have developed, and give feedback on that material. And then in the final session, people will go away and develop in-class activities that we will do together in that final session with an active learning piece. So people get a chance to get some feedback on that. And then I think in this first session we'll also have to determine where the shared workspace is going to be so that we can see what everybody's doing. Some things we may need to do a little bit of work ahead of time so that we're ready to try out those active learning pieces in the class. So we'll talk about that together, what people prefer, Angel or Yammer or something else. So we'll also get that done on that first session. So I hope that sounds like a good plan. So just to review what to do next, you're going to go back to the websites I provided at the beginning of this presentation. You're going to explore and read through each one of those till you feel you're pretty confident in being able to define and understand what the flipped learning model is. And then you're going to send me an email with your questions or concerns about flipping and where you see the potential for that model. And then you're going to come to the ISTC building on Friday, June 13th. We'll be in room 103, which is a computer lab, from 9 to 11 a.m. for our first face-to-face session. Bring any syllabi or current activities that you might want to use just to remind you of some of your courses and where you think you might want to start to think about flipping. And if you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to contact me. And I hope you're excited. I'm really excited to try this. I'm definitely going to try it out in my fall course for 1 or 2 lessons. And I'm really looking forward to working together with everyone. So take care and get in touch if you have any questions